Howdy, guys, and welcome to Survivor Season 41 and a recap of Episode 13. But much more importantly than Episode 13, it's the finale episode, a 3-hour-long episode. At the end of the evening, we're going to find out which of these castaways is walking away with $1 million. Man, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Now, we've only got 5 castaways left. We've got Heather, Erika, Deshawn, Ricard, and Xander. They've moved to a brand new island, which I kind of like. They're starting off with no food, no shelter, nothing. They might as well go ahead and make it miserable for these last couple of days. See how they hold out. But 5 castaways left, and let's talk about who I think's maybe in the best position, who's in the worst position. Best position, I think it's got to be Xander, right? Xander has an idol, which means unless he does something crazy, that he'll make it to the final 4. He will at least make it to the fire making challenge, if nothing else. Xander's got the inside path to make it to the final 2. Heather, I actually think Heather may be in a good position simply because I feel like she is the greatest non-threat to the other castaways. She may get drug along a little bit further just because I don't think people have enough respect for her game. And so she may actually be in a decent position. Ricard is the one who I'm a little bit worried about. He has gained the reputation and a well-deserved reputation of being a great player, a strong threat. I really think Ricard's only chance to advance to the final 4, to the final 2, he's got to win this last immunity. If he doesn't, I'm afraid that the other 4 are going to easily gang up against him and send Ricard out the door. So that's what we got going in. Let's talk about everything that happens in this action. But every episode has been so action-packed. Yet another one as we finish this thing up. So let's get right into it. Now, first of all, we've got Erika, who is rather upset that Deshawn threw her under the bus. You remember last Tribal Council, Deshawn trying to do anything he could to protect himself by saying that Erika wasn't going to take Heather to the finals because Erika felt like their games were too similar, and so she wasn't going to do it. So Erika's still a little upset that Deshawn did it. Deshawn's trying to play off saying, look, I'm just playing the game. It's nothing personal. I still don't think it's that big a deal. I know Deshawn was trying to stir things up, making his Hail Mary pass, so to speak, and all, but I think it's easy enough for Erika just to talk to Heather and say, look, it's just talking. I was telling him what he wanted to hear. I didn't really mean anything by it. So that's what I'm thinking. Now, at one point, Erika tries to talk to Heather, and Heather says, no comment. I don't want to talk about it. It seemed like Heather was a little bit perturbed, and maybe it's just a matter she had to think it through a little bit. By the end of this episode, just a few minutes later, we see the 2 ladies there left talking, and they seem to have made amends and have moved on from it. So again, I don't think it's a huge issue, as huge as maybe people made it out to be. But we do have Ricard talking, and he's trying to make Deshawn the new target for the game. Well, of course he is. He knows that he is target number 1. So he's spending a lot of time trying to talk about the underdog that Deshawn is, that he's played a great game, and really that's who everyone needs to be going after. That's just what Ricard wants. Just keep the target away from him. That's Ricard's motto this particular day. Not sure how effective that's going to be, but that's certainly the game plan. But at the same time, we've got Deshawn still trying to make sure that Ricard is the biggest target, and just doing everything he can to talk about how Ricard's going to take this thing. If any of us let him advance into the final, he's got it. Obviously, Deshawn wants a target other than himself. So here's the thing. Yet again, Xander has the idol. Ricard seems to be targeting Deshawn. Deshawn seems to be targeting Ricard. And it's because they know that Xander is going to be safe because of that idol. But once again, we've got another start to an episode where Xander is basically coasting. He's not under threat. That idol has carried him a long way. It's amazing that no one has tried to flush it out up until this point in time. It's really allowed him to advance without a lot of threat to his game because people were so afraid to try to flush it out and take a chance that they could face the boot instead. So Xander coasting, Ricard targeting Deshawn, targeting Ricard. And as I mentioned, we do see Heather a little upset with Erika. Heather better be working on relationships. As I said, she mentioned, no comment. I really feel, as I said before, that Heather may have the ability to coast a little bit further into this game. But from a relationship standpoint, really, Erica is the tightest bond. And we saw the two of them working together earlier and kind of making some magic happen. So I do think that Heather needs to let bygones be bygones, water under the bridge. I think Erica is her key to advancing a little bit further. And as I say, eventually they do seem to be talking a little bit better. So she's got it figured out. But before we get to any challenges this week, we've got one more twist that Jeff Probst has thrown in. We had a lot of twists this season, didn't we? Now, it seemed that the first half of the season was really top heavy with twists and advantages. Not so much in the second half, although that roulette game of chance that Deshawn had to play, it's got to be the biggest twist of the season, right? Or certainly the most dangerous of the season. But we hadn't seen a lot of the advantages in the latter half as much as we do from the first half. But we got a doozy right here because we get some tree mail. As it turns out, the castaways have a long list of letters, scrambled words. They have to unscramble the words. Once the words are unscrambled, then they have to figure out the words, the proper order to spell out a sentence. It takes a while, but eventually they figure out that it is figuring out where do the trees love to dance. Here's the thing. Advantages, twist, we'll talk about at the end. Sometimes I feel like they overdo it a little bit, but I do believe that this particular kind of twist I like because we as a viewers can watch it, try to figure out. I did, I'm sure same thing a lot of y'all did too. I paused the TV, I looked at that puzzle and tried to unscramble it. I'm happy to report that I did figure it out. Now, if I'm sitting on an island and I'm cold and I'm hungry, I know I'm under the gun. Who knows if I solve it faster than anyone else, but I'm still proud I figured it out. So where do the trees love to dance? Well, people start solving it. Erica is the last person. It seems like she was quite a bit further behind everyone else in terms of solving this puzzle. So everyone else is running around trying to find out where these trees love to dance. They're going up against the shoreline. They're looking everywhere. Erica's the last one to solve it. But you know what? Sometimes fortune comes to the lucky. Sometimes fortune comes to the skilled. I'm not sure which it was. Erica maybe just did a little bit better job of looking and focusing on where these trees could be, because even though she figured out the puzzle last, Erica finds the advantage. Yes, indeed. Erica has gained a huge advantage for the final challenge. We don't know what it is yet. We just know that she's got a little bit of an advantage, but we're getting ready to find out. So day 24. They've only been out there 24 days, 3.5 weeks. That just seems like such a short period of time. Coming from a person who spent three plus months inside a house locked away. But I did get to eat a little bit better than they did. And so, different game show, right? But day 24, they've got an immunity challenge. Biggest one of all? Very well could be. Not only does the winner get immunity, which is important, but they also get steaks and veggies and wine. So on an island where they have nothing, the ability to get a little protein in your system and really get yourself built up, not just for potentially a fire-making challenge at the very end, but also just to get the food in you so that you're mentally prepared for the final two jury, if you make it that so far. So you aren't sitting there hangry and snapping at people, things like that. It's huge, the food along with the immunity. So what's this final immunity challenge? The big one that decides who is going to the final four to decide who's on the ropes. Well, it does involve ropes a little bit. You've got to use a long stick to collect ropes that are hanging from hooks. You take those rope pieces, you string them across 2 pieces of wood to create a ladder. You skedaddle up that ladder. You then grab some puzzle pieces. There's another ladder. It's got a bag of puzzle pieces at the bottom. You have to kind of shift it up over the rungs. Once you get it up to the top, you then have to solve a puzzle. This isn't any puzzle. This is a 75-piece puzzle, so a huge one. Now, so far, of the people who are left in this game, Ricard has proven to be a very strong player when it comes to puzzles and such. So he definitely has a bit of an advantage, but Erica has a much bigger advantage. We find out that because she found that advantage earlier, she actually has some of her rope pieces already on the ground, already strung up on the ladder. So she gets a head start. I think maybe it was 3 ropes that she didn't have to knock down and set up on the ladder. So that's her advantage. Huge when just a few seconds could make a difference. So she's got some rungs already completed. And so as a result, Erica does take the early lead, but she's followed right behind by Ricard. And again, we know how good he is at puzzle. Erica gets to the puzzles first. She starts solving it. But Ricard is so good at these. And it's hard to see. It's hard to tell sometimes to edit how close they truly are, not so much. But it certainly looks like Ricard is making some advances, getting closer and closer to Erica. Eventually, we'll get all 5 up trying to solve their puzzles. Becomes a bit of a race between Erica and Ricard, and you see it. You see Ricard catching up, but in the end, the winner is Erica. Erica has won. She's got immunity at this point in time, and as I said before, I think this is really spelling major problems for Ricard. He seems to be the biggest threat. Certainly, it would seem like Ricard would be the easy target to get out at this point in time. How would it not be? Right? Unless there's some kind of weird magic he could pull, try to develop some type of an alliance. You can't really go after Xander because he's going to play the idol this week. It's his last chance to play it. Erica now has protection. So we're faced with basically Ricard or Deshawn or Heather. So it seems like Ricard's days on this island are very much numbered. But we'll see if he works a little magic again. So Erica's won. Now, Erica's won this thing. She's picked Heather to go with her because it's not just one person. It's never just one person who gets to go off on these little food adventures, right? Now, Erica won. She takes Heather with her. I think that was smart. I think Heather and Erica have worked together in the past. I think it was important for Erica to mend some fences at this point in time. So she has picked Heather to join her. Now I think it's smart. Not only is she building her relationship back up with Heather, but she's keeping the guys weak. And I think that's important. They're strong. They're fast. Keep those guys a little bit weak, a little off center, make it that much easier. So we've got Heather and Erica heading off for their steaks and veggies and wine. Man, I tell you what, you're starving. You drink a little wine. I'd probably go a little easy on the wine, but I'd be loaded up on those proteins. I promise you that. It does seem once they're off on their own that Heather and Erica are tight again. They've worked out the issues they had at the last tribal council. But here's what's interesting. They're both talking about the fact that they really don't want to go forward with Deshawn, which kind of surprises me. Didn't I just get through saying that I figured Ricard would be the easy and consensus target sent home this week? But here we see the 2 women talking about Deshawn really being perhaps a bigger target. Now I get it from Erica's standpoint. Remember, earlier in the season, Deshawn and Danny were willing to throw a challenge so Team Luvu could boot Erica. So there's no love lost between these 2. So I kind of see why they're doing that. Erica obviously got burned by Deshawn in the last tribal council where he threw her under the bus. So Erica's got a little bit of a grudge in wanting to get Deshawn out. I'm just not sure from a strategy standpoint, it makes the most logical decision to go after Deshawn. But that's what they're talking about while they're out there enjoying their steak and wine. So that's kind of interesting. Now, at one point, we've got Ricard talking to Erica and saying that he and Deshawn, they know that they're the 2 primary targets, so they're going to be voting for each other, and it's really going to come down to Xander and Heather and Erica to make this decision. And Erica talks about it. She says, look, I just don't know what I'm going to do. And I can understand that. I can understand being in a Final 5 and having major issues trying to figure out who you want to send home, who you want to take to that Final 4. I kind of been in similar position. So, Erica's saying that she's not really sure what she wants to do. And Xander himself, Xander's feeling a little torn, and you think, well, he'll play the idol. It's pretty easy this time, right? He does have to cast a vote, but more than that, Xander's been tight with Ricard for much of the season. We saw it phrased as in, oh, I want to keep him around because he's a greater target than I am. So I do think there was some strategy in why Xander has been working with Ricard, but I also think there's a little bit of a relationship, some respect, etc. And so we see Xander kind of wondering if getting Ricard is the best thing to do. And he kind of gets this wild idea of, well, what if maybe I played the idol on Ricard instead? Because obviously everyone's going to expect it to be played on himself. So who's going to cast a vote for Xander when they know he's got to play the idol, right? Well, if he then turned around and played on Ricard, he could save Ricard. The two of them could probably send Deshawn out the door off the island is the next big thing. Now, when you've got an idol to protect yourself, who doesn't play it on themselves? In most seasons, for most people, I'd say there's not a chance in the world. But we have seen that Xander occasionally was willing to take some chances with his game. He volunteered to step away from playing for immunity so that the team could get Rice in the past. He hasn't always played the safe and conservative route. So if there's anyone who may play that idol on Ricard, it could be Xander. And certainly that's got Ricard excited, thinking that maybe there's a possibility that something like that could happen. Strategically, or from a viewing standpoint, it'd be a pretty cool tribal council to watch. From a strategy standpoint, Xander can't get too fancy. You do that, next thing you go home and you got a whole lot of people talking about bonehead plays and things like that. So I don't think he's going to use it, but he's certainly talking about it, or at least the edit that we're seeing on the episode is suggesting that he's considering it. And that's the thing. Who really knows? It's tough watching this on TV and knowing that we're getting just selective bits of information, how seriously he may or may not have actually considered this. So tribal council. Does Xander play the idol? Well, yeah, of course he does, because it goes away after this episode. So he plays the idol. Does he play it on Ricard? No. We're getting led on a little bit by the producers, I think, because now he plays it on himself. He kind of leaves Ricard out to dry a little bit. Now, Ricard really shouldn't have counted on Xander playing that idol on himself, because what if Ricard knew he was going to do that? Ricard turned around and cast his vote for Xander. Everyone else voted for Ricard, figuring that he was the easy target to go home. Suddenly, Xander's out the door. So I don't think it was reasonable for Ricard to ever really expect Xander to play it on Ricard. But if you kind of think there's a possibility it doesn't happen, it may lead to a little disappointment, even if it didn't make so much sense to do it. So Xander's played the idol on himself. He's safe. Erica certainly hadn't given away her immunity necklace to anyone else, so she's safe. So we're coming down to Deshawn, Ricard, or I suppose Heather as well. And as it turns out, by a 4-1 vote, Ricard is gone. Yeah, the beast of the season. I gotta say, I mean, Shan, fantastic player. Ricard, I probably put him as number 2. I may even put him up against Shan in terms of quality of play. I love watching Ricard play. He was a strategic player. He was a charismatic player. He also was willing to be cutthroat when he had to, as evidenced by him willing to get rid of his tightest partner, Shan. I loved Ricard's game. I really want to see him come back someday playing again. Or put him into Big Brother house. That'd be kind of interesting to watch as well. But Ricard is gone. It's down to 4 players. And sure enough, just to finish off this season, poured down rain, and they're on this island, no shelter or anything else. They looked absolutely miserable. But finish it up strong. Finish it up miserable. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Easy for me to say. I'm not the one getting rained on and freezing to death. So now we've got 4 people left. We're on to the next and final. We're there, guys. Final immunity challenge. And this was a fun one. We've seen it before. It takes so much balance. Basically, a little bit of an arced piece of wood. You've got to take blocks then spell out. I should have taken a note. Spell out final. I think that's what it was. But I think 5 or 6 blocks. You have to very carefully walk out on the plank, set down one block at a time. Very carefully walk back while you're holding the ledge or holding the piece of wood that's holding these blocks up with a piece of rope. So you've got to balance yourself. Grab another block, go forward, do it again and again and again until you've spelled the words all the way up. Got your foot back against the back line to win immunity. It's one of my favorite challenges just because you don't have to be super strong. It doesn't favor a tall player, a short player, a petite player, a large player. It's just whoever. It takes a lot of focus, a lot of discipline, a lot of patience. It's just a great competition to watch. So we've got this going on, and just as typical, you see some blocks falling, people who think they're getting close, and then the blocks are gone. But really, Xander kind of runs away with this. I don't know that Xander ever dropped any of his blocks. He was very slow, very patient, and that's what it took. So Xander has won his final immunity, which means Xander gets to decide of the other 3 which 2 are doing the fire making challenge and who he's dragging right into the final 2 with him. Congratulations, Xander. He turned it on when he needed to protect himself. As soon as he gets rid of his idol, he wins the very next immunity challenge, so he is protected. He is going to the final 2. Xander's had a good run this season. He absolutely has. Does it get him to the very, very end in that check? Well, we're going to find out pretty quick, aren't we? All right, so now he gets to choose who goes to the finals with him and which 2 compete in the fire challenge. He takes Heather, right? Heather's the GOAT, the person that everyone thinks that they can beat at the end of the day. It seems like Heather would be the logical choice to take. Or does he let someone beat Heather in the fire challenge and take away some of their resume? We've seen in the last few seasons with this fire challenge at Final Four that there's always been this fear that you're going to give someone else that golden moment to win the fire challenge, to fight their way into the final 2 position or final 3 position. I'm thinking, Big Brother, final 3 position. There's always been a fear that you're going to let someone else get that golden moment by winning the fire challenge, and they've got that last thing that the jury sees when they're casting their votes. We've even seen in the past the idea of maybe the person who's won immunity gives up that immunity and participates in the fire challenge just to get their own final little resume builder. So theoretically, you could have Xander going against Heather, for example, in the fire making challenge. If he wins that as well, he can then go ahead and go to the final 2. So that's another option to consider. But all that being said, if I'm Xander, I still think I'm taking Heather with me and letting Erica and Deshawn battle it out, building that fire. But yeah, it's a lot of thinking that goes on in this thing. And as it turns out, that's not what Xander does. Instead, Xander has decided to take Erica. Now, here's the interesting thing. It seems like he tells Erica fairly early in the day that he's going to take her. And as he starts watching, he's doing it because he thinks she's pretty good at fire building and that she's going to win running away if she has to build a fire against either Heather or Deshawn. If she does that, then suddenly she's got this resume boost when she comes in. So he's thinking because she's so good, so likely to win, just drag her along with him anyway and keep her from having that last little big moment to talk to the jury about. So that's the plan. Until he starts watching Erica try to start her fire and realizes that she's not so good at making fire after all. And we watch Deshawn and Heather and Erica, all 3 struggle trying to hit that knife with the flint and all of that. Before I went on the island, I'd be practicing so much. I'd be a fire starter expert. But it's not the case here. We see Erica struggling a little bit because here's the thing. He said that he's going to take her along. So does Erica even need to practice? Well, no, not if you truly believe what you're being told by Xander, but you never know who may kind of flip on you and at the last minute throw you in there. So she has to practice just in case. And he realizes that maybe he shouldn't have told her quite so early he was taking her. Maybe maybe it made more sense to let her fight it out because he sees how bad she is at making fires. But water under the bridge, is that the right phrase here? I don't know. The commitment has already been made. The promise has already been made. If he doesn't do that, there could be repercussions as well. And at the end, Xander stays loyal to his word. He says, "Nah, I'm taking Erica to the final two with me. I'm gonna let Deshawn and Heather fight it out in the fire challenge to see who joins us as a final three." And he's really hoping that Heather's going to win this thing and join him in the finals because it all gets back to what Deshawn had said in the last tribal council, that he felt that Heather and Erica were playing a very similar game, that they would split some votes if they're both up there. Xander's thinking the same thing. Xander's thinking that Deshawn may have some votes that's going to be tough for Xander to counter against. But if you've got Erica and Heather both there, that people who would tend to vote for one also would tend to vote for the other. And so you may see some votes split. So that's Xander's objective. So now we've got the fire making challenge itself. And I got to say, this is one heck of a fire making challenge. Man, they go back and forth. It looks like Heather starts off really strong. She's got that fire going. Deshawn comes back, but then I think Deshawn started off strong, and Heather took a little while, but all of a sudden Deshawn basically runs out of the juice with this fire. It starts dying back down. Heather suddenly is higher. It's back and forth. It truly is. It's probably the best fire making challenge I've seen on Survivor so far. And the end result, by not more than a couple of seconds, Deshawn has won this thing. You got to be so happy to win like that, the way he did. Deshawn has won, which means he goes on to the final three. Heather is wrapping up. She's done. She finishes at final four. I gotta say, mad props to Heather. I kind of made a few jokes here and there of some of the competitions and such where she was maybe not jumping into the water, maybe not doing quite as much as some of the other people, but she did what it took. She had strategy. She jumped in when she needed to. She made it a long way. Now, there's some of that because people didn't consider her a threat. Well, sure, that's part of it. You got to figure out what your game is. There's tribal council a few weeks back where Heather said, I stepped away from playing the game because I know that the people I can beat are the ones that are already over on jury, and the ones that I may not be able to beat are the ones that are still here, sitting here competing. There's something to be said for being aware enough about what your strengths or weaknesses are, that you don't try to be the hero, that you step back and you let someone else win when they need to, if it benefits your game. So the awareness got Heather a long way, and props to her, because I probably was not forecasting that she would get anywhere close to this far in the game. But Heather finishes up at 4. So now we've got a final 3 of Deshawn, Xander, and Erica. And we've got it tribal. Let's see. Let me go with this. Xander's decided to take Erica. We talk about that. On to the final tribal. Now, here's what's interesting. And it was a decent tribal council, the speeches and all of that. Xander started off strong. He answered Ricard, I think, had asked a question about, or was it Danny? I think it's probably much more likely Danny, talking about first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. Xander gives a fantastic answer, I think, about how early game, mid game, end game, how he did different things to play well. And I think he answered that question well. There were other questions asked of him, though, about his awareness of his position in the game and how other people were being received, areas like that where I don't know that Xander answered quite as well as I would have expected. But here's the thing I took away, without going into massive detail on the tribal council Q&A. I noticed there wasn't much discussion going on about challenges. Who won what challenge? Who was a strong competitive player? Who wasn't? It was all about the social game. That really seemed to be about 99% of the conversation. Nothing to do with the competitions. Who played the better social game? Who was more aware of what was going on? Who made the big moves? Who was just kind of floating? Who was coasting along? I thought it was very interesting. And I love watching Survivor, knowing that they have so much time to talk. I don't think they've got a time limit. I think Jeff Probst would let them to sit there and talk for 30, 45 minutes if necessary, as long as the jury had questions. I think they they give them a lot more free reign. Whereas with Big Brother, you have like a minute and a half to throw your pitch out there, which is not much time to explain 3.5 months worth of play. So I really like the way Survivor does it. It was very interesting watching the way they played the game, what they tried to sell themselves on, and again, I think they all did a good job, but Xander maybe faltered a little bit there at the end. And so then we come down to the final vote, and Jeff has everyone vote. As it turns out, he's not waiting until we actually see this thing live. He's not waiting until December or whatever, 17th or whatever, to announce the results. He immediately reads out the results there at Tribal Council, which means someone has known that they are a millionaire for the last, when was this film? 6 months or whatever. And they haven't been able to say a word about, that's got to be tough. Trying to keep that kind of secret. But they vote right then and there. Jeff reads out the results. And as it turns out, we have 1 vote for Deshawn. We have 0 votes for Xander, which means by a vote of 7-1, Erika has won Survivor 41. She's won the $1 million. It's incredible. I've got to say, I was surprised. I really thought Xander was going to win this. I looked at all the things that he did throughout the season, what he was involved with. He found that the advantage that eventually led to an idol, but meant he had to sacrifice his vote throughout much of the early part of the season. He was involved with the fake idol to get Liana to use up her advantage without actually getting the vote. He was very rarely targeted. He coasted through the entire game. He sacrificed himself. He put his game at risk a little bit to help the tribe out in terms of getting rice, food, etc. I said earlier that really Xander, Deshawn, Erika, Ricard, any one of those 4, I would have been perfectly happy winning. And I'm happy with Erika winning. I'm just a little surprised, which disappoints me, not because I don't think she deserves to win, but simply because it tells me that I kind of misread a lot of what happened towards the end in this game, that Erika had as much support as she did. Now, I thought about that some more, and I don't know if it's as much that I misread it, or is it more that the edit was a little bit misleading. I didn't see this perception as much that everyone was seeing Erika as this huge mover, shaker, strategist, manipulator that got her the win. And maybe that's part of her gameplay. She mentioned during the Tribal Council Q&A that she kind of is the type of person that no one respects. They think of her as the intern. She's the little small girl that no one really takes seriously. And so she's learned to operate under those parameters. And I went back and I looked at my preview before the first episode even aired, where I talked about every survivor. And for Erika, I said that I thought people maybe were going to underestimate her because she was petite, her small size, and that while I feared that she needed to be careful because she said she was going to be a manipulator and that maybe she's going to play too hard in the beginning of the season that could create issues for her. I also thought she'd be underestimated because she doesn't have the size to really stand out. Now, I do think that Erika benefited greatly from being on Team Luvu, who went through the whole first half of the season without losing any members. So she didn't have to vote out people. She didn't have to necessarily create enemies, create really strong alliances, which means you also have people that you're really not aligned with within your tribe. She didn't have to do any of that through the first part of the season because her tribe was so strong. I think that helped. Remember, as I said a little earlier, there was a time when Danny and Deshawn were ready to throw a challenge just so they could boot Erika out. So in a different situation, she may not have made it to the end game itself, but she deserves a victory. She was behind some of the strategic moves. She and Heather were played kind of the swing vote a couple of times. She's the one that had started pushing to get Ricard out, to go with a 2-2-2 vote instead of a 3-3 vote, which could have jeopardized her game. She was very, very much underneath the radar. And again, I think a lot of people may be a little surprised that she won, and I blame that a little bit on the editing itself. So a huge surprise, but congratulations to Erika. She absolutely deserves it. She was fun to watch. She seemed like a very much an everyday player. She wasn't a huge alpha male competition beast that you just expect's going to win everything. She wasn't a huge puzzle solver like Ricard was. Every time there's a puzzle, you expect him to do well. She didn't have any one strength that just stood out above everyone else's. But at the end of the day, she figured out how to make it work. She made it to the end. So props to Erica for winning this thing. So there you go, guys. Erica has won Survivor. I think we'll see her back. Now, I don't know when the next winners all-star kind of season is going to be, but I'd like to see her come back. How is she going to play the game if she is now identified early on as a strong player, as not someone who can kind of stay under the radar? She's going to have to change her game if she plays next time, but I think she may do it. So let's talk about the season overall before we shut this thing down. Casting, man, a score from 0 to 10 on casting. I'd be tempted to give it a 10, but I always want to leave a little room for improvement on down the road. So I'm going to throw in a very strong 8 on casting. I loved everyone. And I think back some of the early players that we lost, JD and David. There were players like Jeannie, even the very early boots off the island. I liked all of this cast. I truly did. But from start to finish, I think casting did a fantastic job. So I'm going to change it. I'm not going to say how strong. I'm going to say a 9 out of 10. I really like the cast. Production from a twist standpoint, advantages and everything else. I'm not sure I was a huge fan of the castmates going off to this island and risking their vote and everything, or having a 3-way veto. Some of that, I don't know. I think, and I was not a fan of Liana's power. I thought that was too strong of a power to give a person. So in terms of advantages, twist, and let's talk about the hourglass. I can't finish this episode without talking to hourglass set, changing time. Another situation where Erica truly was on the block, and a twist absolutely saved her. And I'd say at the time, if you don't break that hourglass and flip things around, you're crazy. And she did it. I mean, she did what she needed to do to save her game. But if she hadn't had that opportunity, Erica easily could have gone home that week. So the hourglass twist, I'll give 2 thumbs down. Overall twist and advantages, no, I'll say 5 out of 10. They were okay. That worked out fine, I suppose. But there were a few that I thought were a little too hard to follow, a little too much power sometimes. So we've got that. And then Jeff Probst and the new Survivor, I'm going to give him probably a 7 or 8 out of 10. Maybe should go higher. I like Jeff Probst this season. I like that he talked to the camera some, filled us in, that we got to play the game along with the Survivor players because we didn't always know what was going to happen at Tribal. The editors kept enough information away from us. Remember, we didn't know Xander had that fake idol until after Liana had asked for it. So they did a great job of keeping us in the dark a little bit, adding a little bit more suspense. I hope they keep doing it. I enjoyed it. I know some people didn't, but I really enjoyed that. So I'll give production an 8 out of 10. Overall, I enjoyed the season. I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was good gameplay. I love the cast. And I'm ready. I'm ready for the next season. We got to see a very small clip of next season's players, which apparently they've already played the game. So it won't be long at all. I'm excited. Well, welcome to Survivor 42. I can't wait. But between now and then, we got Amazing Race, which I'm excited about as well. Guys, thank you so much for sitting in, for the support during the season of recaps. I can't believe 13 episodes were done, 29 days, and we're done. We've got our winner. Congratulations to Erica, $1 million winner. And I hope to see her next year at Hearts of Reality. Had a blast visiting all the Survivor people at this Hearts of Reality last weekend. So much fun. It would have been cool if these survivors could have been there as well, but they all knew the deep, dark secret and the results. And I'm sure that they were having to be very careful about that. Guys, thank you for the support. We'll be back for Survivor 42. Until then, SKD 143. Merry Christmas, my friends. Happy holidays. I'll see y'all soon. Cheers.